Welcome back to Real Life Academy Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Moore, and today we're going to be answering a question that's caused a little bit of division between the mental health community for the past decade or so. And that is, does the coaching industry need to be regulated? And for that, we need to answer some smaller but equally important questions. So let's kick this off into high gear as we explore what regulation is, how it's applied right here on the Real Life Podcast. So don't forget to click like and subscribe to the podcast. Make sure that you get each new episode every time we put something out. I know it's been a while. It's been a few months. We're back in the game. Now then, we need to first look at the purpose of regulation before we even discuss this. What even is regulation? Why does it happen? And is it even necessary? So once we have that answer, we can then answer the question of whether it's appropriate to regulate the industry, right? Great. So before we jump in here, it's important to understand the distinction between coaching and therapy. Now, I've covered this in a previous episode, but for those that are just tuning in, I'll give you kind of a brief rundown. So the primary job of a therapist is to work with a patient to gain relief from symptoms, maintain or improve daily function, and to improve their quality of life. Now, they help patients identify various triggers while helping them understand the causal correlation between thought patterns, their environment, and how it relates to those specific triggers. It's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. The issue is that therapists are not coaches. Okay? Coaches, on the other hand, they take this knowledge and then they work with us one-on-one with the patient to help them develop the skills necessary to overcome the issues that have been diagnosed, okay? Coaches do not diagnose or treat any mental health symptoms. Coaches do not make treatment plans, okay? They don't represent clients legally in a court of law. In simple terms, a coach is not a mental health practitioner. Therapists identify what skills are needed to help the client get past their issues, right? Think of them like a discovery session. They explore various theories to arrive at a conclusion. Coaches then work with the clients to build those skills and get past those issues. That is the difference, and what a huge difference it is. So to understand this a little clearer, you can think of a law enforcement officer and a judge. The officer has the ability to arrest someone and place them in jail, but it's the judge that determines for how long that person stays in jail, what the conditions are, if any, for their release, right? So they have two mutually exclusive roles, even though they're under the same umbrella of an industry. So they both have, going back to the judge and the officer, they both have the ability to incarcerate someone, but only the judge has the ability to determine the conditions of that incarceration, okay? So they determine how it's carried out, kind of like a coach would be the judge, right? They would decide how that's best carried out, what those milestones look like, and what actions we need to take to make that happen. Now then, since we both have a firm understanding of the differences between the two, let's talk about regulation. A regulation is a set of requirements that's issued by a federal government agency to implement laws passed by Congress. So, first off, if you want to regulate any industry, you need congressional approval. This means massive amounts of money in lobbying efforts and a ton of drafted legislation. Then they ask for the public's response. Well, they should. They need to know the majority of people in the public and how they view that industry. After all, if the only people they petitioned were involved in an industry, that directly conflicts with the one proposed. It's a no-brainer. The industry with the most amount of money and lobbying dollars will typically always win. This is why they ask for public opinion. So the agency then considers the public comments, and then if they find that it has merit, they would issue a regulation. Now, it's important to understand that anything and everything can be regulated if we just allow the government to intervene in every facet of our lives. And while the government's great at doing a lot of jobs, when it comes to working one-on-one with individual patients and coaches, that may be a little bit of a different field. So the problem with regulation also is that once it's set in motion, it's nearly impossible to overturn. And it takes a tremendous amount of lobbying, a tremendous amount of appeals to get anything overturned or revised. So we have decided as a society that it's best to only regulate industries that absolutely need governmental oversight. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, the coaching industry definitely needs it. And that's great. Your opinion matters and it's important. But the good example that I can give you right now is in aerospace manufacturing. Okay? If we just let companies decide what rules they want to follow when building an airplane, we could never guarantee that anyone who flies on an airplane would be safe, right? And we couldn't hold anyone responsible if something happened. The same can be said for therapy and medical practice. If we don't put rules in place to tell people how they can treat patients, we're going to revert back to the early 1900s, and nothing will stop a psychologist from lobotomizing a patient for a failure to comply. Okay, so what about coaching? Well, if these coaches are going to be working alongside vulnerable populations, such as those in the mental health field, should we be regulating any part of that industry? And my answer would be yes, absolutely. But not in the way you might think. You see, people are at their best when they have the freedom to explore and create. What works for one person may not work for another person, right? We're all humans. We're not homogenous. We are dynamic. So we don't want to regulate the creative potential for a coach to teach a certain skill set. We don't want to say you have to teach it this way because everyone learns this way. Okay? That is a very big recipe for disaster. We need clients to be able to learn in their own unique way. On the other hand, as of the date of this podcast, anyone in the United States can claim that they're a coach. That's not good, okay? There are very few rules and regulations regarding what coaches have the capacity to do and who they have the capacity to work with. And to my knowledge, we are the only company on the face of this planet that has adopted a strict policy of ethics that holds coaches to the same standards as behavioral therapists or other mental health practitioners. No one in the nation does what we do. And unfortunately, that's caused a lot of distrust to be generated in the mental health community regarding the coaching sector. But the big question is, should there be regulation? And if so, what should we be regulating? I think the most important question here is what specific part of the coaching field or coaching profession needs to be federally regulated. So coming from a strictly ethical position, we believe that coaches need to have a minimum educational background in undergrad and a certain amount of time working hands-on in the field with paying clients or non-for-profit in a specific subset or practice to be classified as a coach to the industry of which they claim. Now, luckily for us, in 2020, the ICF adopted a code of ethics. It was great for all the people that get credentialed through the International Coaching Federation. In addition to that, they have, additional requirements for each of their coaches. They ensure that everyone is not only properly trained to provide coaching to clients, but also to hold them to the strictest code of ethics in the nation. It's great. I believe that for the time being, it will be up to the issuing agency to enact a code of ethics. And furthermore, I believe it's the responsibility of every company, every single company who works alongside coaches or hires coaches or works with any coaches in any subset or niche. It is their job to properly vet and hold their own code of ethics, which are in compliance to a regulated industry. Do I think that the coaching industry needs to be regulated? Yes, I do. However, outside of academia and ethical considerations aside, putting all of that aside, I think that coaches need to have the freedom to work alongside those clients and help them in a way that matters to the client. So when we take away that freedom, what we're doing is we're taking away a coach's ability to teach valuable skills like financial security, parenting, nutrition, emotional intelligence, and so much more. We don't want to tell people how to teach. What we want to do is to set guidelines in place to help them stay on track and ensure that they provide the most creative and effective is the big word there, solutions to some of the most difficult problems that we as people face experiencing this human condition that we all experience, you and me. But this isn't just about me. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts and share this with a friend. Ask them how they feel about it. Until next time, remember, you are capable of incredible change, but like always, it has to start with you. My name is Marcus Moore, and I want to thank you for taking the time to listen with me today on the Real Life Podcast. None of this is possible without your support, and for those that believe in what we do, listen, we are eternally grateful. I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, remember that you help us shape the world one person at a time. Take care.